reasonable to equate cooperation with tyranny. It's reasonable to point out that cooperation could degenerate into tyranny.
I think you just kind of dropped the mask a little bit, because you, in your example, posited these are children. So by its very nature, all these things that you're talking about in a positive sense have to force some group to be a second-class citizen, or at least obedient to some kind of elite. And this is something that I think is the benefits of this, at the very least, are enormously overblown. I think freedom means every kid can play the game that they want. There might
but not
be
with other people. That's the problem.
I disagree.
And I use children as an example because I was concentrating on games, and because it's out of games that the polity emerges over the course of its natural development. So it's not a rational top-down imposition, all things considered. It's the emergence of a game-like structure that incorporates more and more people. And see, if you take two-year-olds play their own game. And each of them plays their own game, but by the time they hit 3 or 4, they have to be able to integrate the game they're playing with what other children want to play, so that they can play games with other children, which they're unbelievably motivated to do. And it means that each of them have to subordinate their instincts, so to speak, for the moment, but hypothetically they gain as a consequence of their mutual subordination to this higher order game.
I don't see it as subordinate. So if my choices are play this game by myself or play this game I like second with a lot of other people, I would value this. I'm playing a game in order to have fun. So in that case, the first game, which is my most favorite game, if no one wants to play with me, it's not going to be that fun. So it is rational and not at any sense of subordination to choose my second preferred game, because now I'm having fun being able to play it.
Well, let's look. I would say that what we're doing here is a game, and I don't mean that in any negative sense. You're allowing, by participating in this conversation, you're allowing for the possibility and the belief, I would say, that whatever we're doing collaboratively is of more utility at the moment than whatever you could be doing individually at the moment.
Correct.
Because otherwise you wouldn't be doing it. Okay,
Correct.
so, and I would say that we are cooperating, we're also competing, and we also might be tyrannizing each other to some degree. But there's something in this mutual interaction that we're engaging in voluntarily that is cooperative and that isn't being enforced by some external agent.
Right, it's entirely cooperative. And this is my whole point. This is why I'm an anarchist, because this is when people are doing things voluntarily, they are going to choose the things that are preferable to them. The problem, and when you have conflict, is when you have a third actor coming into our conversation and being the state and forcing both of us to do something we would not want to do for their sake. And that, when you play that out, that game on a national, international scale, that is the definition of oppression. Instead of you and I having a podcast, why aren't we in the factory making socks for poor people? That's of more utility, says the third party who's not involved here, and that's the danger in my view, and the legitimacy of that kind of third party.
It is so. The development. I picked up a reasonable number of my ideas about the relationship between games and morality and higher order social structures from the developmental psychologist Jean Piaget, and he was interested in the science of ethics, essentially, and his goal was the reunification of science and religion, actually, and very few people know that about Piaget, and he pointed out quite clearly that a cooperative game would outcompete a tyrannical game over time, because the tyrannical game had to waste resources in enforcement, whereas a cooperative game didn't, because people were voluntarily going to go along with it. Then you say, well, I think you can make a perfectly credible case that if you could choose between two games and one of them involved force and the other didn't, and they had the same end, let's say, that the cooperative game is to be preferred, and it's also more sophisticated. But I would say as well, we actually don't know how to pull that off. Some of it's just lack of ability. Well, when you integrate so many people, like you have 330 million people in the United States, it's really hard to organize a cooperative game.
Well, that's the role of the corporate press. The corporate press puts forth the agenda of the power class and gets everyone persuaded to do that which they had wanted to do. Mario Cuomo, whose book I got paid, Andrew Cuomo, the governor of New York, whose book I got paid to read, he said explicitly in his book that if this wasn't done through voluntary compliance, I wouldn't be able to pull off half of this. And what is allowed to happen is you have decentralized enforcement of these rules. And we saw this during the lockdowns, where every low status person had an opportunity to assert dominance over somebody else by going up to them and yelling at them that they're not wearing a mask, even though going up to them ostensibly is going to put your life in danger. And you made a very cogent point about how persuasion is a lot cheaper than force. A lot of people use all these Orwellian 1984 comparisons, and I think the comparison to contemporary terms is much closer to Brave New World. And it's through the use of pleasure and the carrot, because it's a lot cheaper to persuade people it's in their best interest. Go along, you're going to give up your freedom, but I'm going to give you safety, and they'll be champing at the bit to do that. H.L. Mencken, the great cynic of the early 20th century, said that the average man does not want to be free, he simply wants to be safe. And for those of us who are fans of freedom, who regard liberty as a high value, the issue is, how do you engage in a polity with people who don't really find liberty of use and would rather have every minute of their life, whether through their corporate job or what they watch on TV or what they wear, pretty much decided for them. I mean, the speech in The Devil Wears Prada that Miranda Priestley makes about how you're wearing that blue sweater because the people in this room, chose the cerulean jacket 5 years ago, then it went to the fringe designers, then it became in the mall, then you found it on clearance, and you think it has nothing to do with you, but it was because we had made these decisions and it percolated down to you. And I think that top-down approach, I mean, Ed Bernays talked about this, Walter Lippmann talked about this in the books Propaganda and Public Opinion. This was something that they figured out 100 years ago, specifically during the Woodrow Wilson administration. How do you get over the complete, fascist takeover of the United States, of course, under wartime premises, and get everyone involved in something that would have been completely alien to American thought just 5 years prior, that we're going to send all our kids over to Europe to fight a European war. This was a major revolutionary shift in how America regarded its relationship between the state and the population, and between America and the rest of the world. Woodrow Wilson was the first president to leave America as president. FDR just went to Panama, but that was like American territory at the time. Teddy Roosevelt. So they've been at this for 100 years. So they're playing the long game, and now it's starting to fall apart, thankfully.
Okay, so I got three things I want to ask you now.
Sure.
I want to know who they is. Okay, so then I want to know, in The Devil Wore Prada, were you on Miranda Priestley's side or on the side of the naive ingenue who, was hypothetically tyrannized by her? And now I can't remember the third one. We'll stick with those two for the time being.